Hello, everyone. My name is Mark from the Misplay Podcast, and you're listening to Eternal Journey, everyone's favorite Eternal podcast.
Welcome to Eternal Journey, the podcast.
Greetings, all my knights and pound to ones out there. You are listening to Eternal Journey, the podcast that talks about all things eternal with a focus on limited play. I'm your host, Jedi. This is episode 108, the podcast where we are going to be saying goodbye to Empire of Glass. That's right, it is the EOG Sunset Show. But without further ado, let me introduce my good friends that join me on this show every week. First off, we have John Holio. What's up, friend?
Jedi, Alex, how you guys doing?
Well, how you doing?
I'm doing swell. Thanks for asking. And that other delectable voice on there is Alex. What's up, Darth Herman?
What's up, boys? How's it going?
Good.
Great.
All right. Get down to brass tacks here real quick. A little bit of housekeeping, of course. Just want to say thanks to all the people that continue to support both the show and the Twitch channel. A couple of shout outs this week. Fast Cookie, Kismet Bestet, Jesse Weaver, Ulrich42, John Holio, coming in with what, year and a half, I think it was? Crazy.
Yeah.
Luke Kaiser, Chewbacca, and Gibbon++. Gibbon, I hope your move goes smoothly, my friend. And of course, once again, a continued ongoing thank you for everyone that continues to support the show. Really do appreciate you guys. You can catch us live at twitch.tv/Jedi_EJ every Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday. All right, guys, let's go ahead and dive into the business, because this is pretty much the last time we're going to be talking about anything EOG, because the new set drops next week, and then we're going to be jumping into our commons and uncommon set review. So this is our final pack one, pick one for this set, final crack-a-pack. And we'll start off with you, John. Going to the commons, we have Send for the Reserves, the 2-time slow spell. Play a 1/2 soldier, or a 2/1 soldier. Amplify 2, play an additional 2/1 soldier. This card has been absolutely fantastic for me. I'm not super happy about first picking it, but I'm not going to be upset either. Barking Vermin, 1/1 Grenadin Beast for 1 primal. It has Entomb, play a snipe. Yeah, nope, never. I think I can probably count one hand how many times I've put this card in my deck. Fresh Recruit. I mean, why get one when you can get multiple off of some reserves? Right. So we're not worried about that. Laser Blast. There we go. This is a slow spell for 3 fire. And when one of your units, one of your units deals damage, deals its current health in damage to an enemy unit, or you would think I would have this card memorized by now, but I still don't.
Blood Blast. You take your butt and you blast them with it. Boom.
Yeah, there you go. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. It's actually kind of funny.
Without a deadly butt, you kill the thing.
That's right.
So let me see. One of your units deals its current health in damage to an enemy unit or a site. That's what it was. Sorry. Laser Blast costs 2 less if your unit is a sentinel. Yep, great, solid removal spell. Happy about it. 95% of the time. And then if you're lucky like me, you can actually be unhappy about it 5% of the time and be like, womp womp. Replicate Sellsword is next. Is a 2/1 Soldier Simulacra for 3 factionless, regen, and summon Plunder. As audience, another great safe first pick is a 1-cost no faction relic. Summon Plunder, then pay 2 and sacrifice Okessa's audience to create and draw a 5/5 Sentinel. Valkyrie Emulator is a 1/2 Valkyrie Simulacra for 2 factionless. Flying, summon Plunder. And finally, at the last common is Unexpected Arrival, a 2-time fast spell. Give one of your units +1/+1, a unit in your hand +1/+1, and a unit in your market +1/+1. Each has its cost reduced by 1. Going into the uncommons, we have Rail Driver Valkyrie, the 1/3 Valkyrie for 2 Shadow. Flying ultimate. When you play an attachment, play a snipe. Vicious Overgrowth is a 2 primal spell. Overwhelm, deal 3 damage. Amplify 2, add a random primal card to your market. And finally, Plate Grafters, a 2/2 Sentinel for 2 Justice. Endurance, Ultimate, pay 3 to swap a card from your hand or a Justice card or Factionless card from your market. Then, give a unit in your hand +1/+1 and Endurance. Finally, at the rare slot, the solid one here is Express Route, a 4 Xenon fastball. Put an enemy unit on the bottom of its owner's deck. It gets minus health for each other card in that deck. All right, John. I thought this was a pretty good pack to end the season with, just because, I mean, there are a lot of good cards in here. So what do you think?
Yeah, there really are. There's like I think any of those uncommons are pretty first pickable, as well as the rare. And then yeah, there's some first pickable commons here. If none of those were good, I'd be happy to first pick some of these commons as well. I think ultimately it would come down to this Plate Grafter for me, though. It's just grafters are all good. I love being Justice in the format, so that makes this one a relatively good one. I don't know. Yeah, I think it's just Plate Grafter for me.
Fair enough. Alex, what do you think about this pack?
Yeah, pretty much same sentiments there. It's a really good pack. I wouldn't fault someone for taking even a couple of these commons as a first pick. Not necessarily out of this pack, but I have first picked Okessa's Audience. I have first picked Send for the Reserves. It's not my favorite grafter, but I like a color that it pairs with, like Rakano specifically. So I think I'm on the Plate Grafter as well here.
Yeah, and that's ultimately what I ended up taking as well. I think Justice is one of the cards or one of the factions that could really benefit from market stuff. Also, it kind of lets you, granted, we didn't see a lot of it towards the end of the format, but it was a way to also mitigate some of the damage of send to market. So, Express Route is fantastic removal. It's fast, it's unconditional, and it does a really good job of making sure the unit doesn't come back ever. But it is a 2 faction kind of commitment, somewhat. Granted, they're both single influence. But I think it's definitely between those two as top picks for me. With, like you guys said, all the commons being respectable picks as well. But yeah, I went with Plate Grafter. So funny that we still kind of end up similar at the end, even a strong pack like this. But I really don't think there's a way to go wrong. But yeah, that's it. That's our last pack one, pick one, guys. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into our Sunset Show. So starting off, question number 1. If you could summarize the set in one sentence, what would it be? Can you handle a 5/5 on turn 3? That's what I went with. Alex?
Let's see here. You want to be in red. That's what I would say about the set.
Yep, that's aptly accurate. John?
Yeah, I'm basically saying the same thing, right? I said Dr. Basher Love, or how I stopped worrying about value and learned how to love aggressive bombs.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes just drafting 3 or 4 bashers got you there. The card definitely defined the format, no doubt about it, in all iterations.
Yeah, I spent a lot of our what was it, the last show, for preparation for the draft open, talking about Basher, whether you're the Basher deck or how, what's your plan for that kind of thing. So yeah, it definitely defined the format. I think Basher and regen as a mechanic were probably the most format defining things, and like auto tread can be lumped in there, right, too.
Yep. All right, next one. What turned out to be the best archetype? I felt like it was Rakano Beatdown. Like I'll let you guys jump in there, but I mean, obviously we wanted to be in fire. That was deepest color with the most aggression, and then splashing Justice in there gave you some weapon abilities. It gave you a ton of evasion and flyers in both colors. And then, some occasional build rounds as well as access to some of the most busted cards in the format. So yeah, that's kind of where I sat at. Where were you at, Alex? Because I know I'm kind of with you on what you wrote as well, but I think for me,
I'm like
Ricardo kind of stood out.
Ricano mostly gives you access to the great, red cards, and then just pairs really well with the weapons on the Ricano side. And then Stone Scar, you get really good removal on the Shadow side, especially out of the draft packs. So yeah, I would say that it like those two, probably Ricano just a little bit better, but those two by far I think were the best.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you guys noticed this with the draft championship, but I think like most of like the top four and definitely the top two decks were all Stone Scar, like with the emphasis on the scrap hounds, right? Like just because that was like one way to outclass Basher like almost as quickly. It's funny because both Rakano and Stone Scar, I've heard some prominent drafters say were like they're either archetypes that didn't work for them, or like I heard someone else like that made day two in the tournament, for example, say that like they just no matter what like did not want to be in Stone Scar for some reason. And I agree with you guys. These two were great archetypes for me as well, and two of my favorite. And I would add to that, like I think the one that was most consistent for me personally was probably Argenport. And he was usually like an Argenport kind of attachments theme of or sub theme going on. And then another one I also thought was one of the best archetypes. I thought was Praxis Sentinels when that one came together.
Yeah, initially I was leaning towards Sentinels as well because it just felt like you didn't have to go deep into the Sentinel theme. Just running straight Praxis kind of gave you that fire, the aggression from fire, but still the top end from time. So I agree. It just, I don't know, one of the iterations at some point, it just kind of didn't fizzle out for me, but I found myself not drafting it as much, and I don't quite remember why.
I just thought it was really cool to do the whole, what's that old time card, like the big one with Bond, like Stone Scour.
Oh, Scour Stone, yeah.
Yeah, oh my gosh, like that's never been more supported, right? You could just play just a Crasher on itself and then bond the thing out is insane.
Yeah, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. Which cards were you most wrong about during the set reviews? Which cards really surprised you one way or another? So, oh man, yeah, okay, perfect, John. I'll let you talk about it then, because that's definitely one I wanted to bring up too. For me, Blackout the Skies. I didn't go back to check the set review, but I feel like we might have thought it was okay or maybe a market card. It just turned out that card was perfectly fine to main deck. It being fast, and then having the amplify, being able most of the time, just being able to take out 2 flyers allowed you to get rid of the thing you wanted to. And it being fast lets you kind of take advantage of your opponent slapping weapons on an evasive unit, or maybe making specific blocks and stuff. Like that card just ended up being way better than I anticipated it being, because typically on the show, we're like, all right, if you give your opponent the chance to choose, granted, this does have a little bit of restrictions on it, but still, it's not going to work. It's going to work out what's best for your opponent, but it was easier than expected to navigate the game in a way where Blackout the Skies was just a blowout. So I'll throw mine up there for Blackout the Skies. Go ahead and talk about yours, John, because I'm right there with you, man. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I said Roving Workshop, right? I think I was very high on that in the set review, and it was because I swear it was like bugged during the preview week where it was like making multiple flyers for me. I don't know, like
yeah, I remember you saying that.
Yeah, like I had played it and it had done that. So, but I don't know if they like stealth fixed the bug. I don't remember them mentioning it, or I don't know exactly what happened there, but it definitely doesn't work that way now. And it turned out as well that Rakano Amplify was just really not supported, right? So, like all the good Amplify cards you had access to in those colors, like were just kind of expensive on the Amplify part, which most of the Amplify matters card, most of you wanted the cheap Amplify, right? Like on hardiness where it's one kind of thing. And then yeah, I also I hinted during the set review that Daring Swordmaster might be like slightly better than unplayable, but no, it was definitely just super bad. So And like, yeah, even after the buff recently, I think it's still quite bad.
Yeah, someone commented on I think the YouTube about Roving Workshop, which was funny because I think that was one of the first cards we talked about. I thought it was funny that I guess they must have fixed that bug like fairly quickly then.
Yeah, right when the set came out, I tried it like that week or whatever, and it was no longer doing that.
Yeah, but even then, like the 4/6 body just never was relevant because people were slice slashing over it or deadly. It just, and then like you said, the amplify to get a free unit didn't work. Yeah, that card just never worked out for me at all this entire format. So I feel you on. I'm right there with you, Alex. What about you?
Well, I didn't go back and look, but I remember really looking down on a couple of cards, Medibot and Malaga Munitions. Like, was like, yeah, I don't want those things on an installment plan. It turns out, yeah, I do want those things on an installment plan. And there were just so many relic themes, having a relic sit around, having a relic that you can sacrifice later for some other effect. The Medibots were the most annoying thing to have to trudge through to get to your opponent and just like build a wall that was just like, yeah, come attack me. I'm going to gain 3 life. You know, it's just great. And then the munitions goes really good with the weapons theme. It puts 2 weapons, works really good with hybrid, which is a card that lets you get a weapon back out of your graveyard. So yeah, just those 2. I think I gave them like D's, but they're like easily C pluses and a part of a lot of decks. So yeah, easily those 2 cards for me.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, as I was going through drafts in the format, right? Like, when we're going through EOG packs, those are 2 cards that I'm like, just please be a Medibot, please be a Medi. They're just such role players. Yeah.
Yeah, the fact that you were never in a hurry to play the second one and you just could do it when you're like, all right, I got nothing better to do this turn. Sweet, I'll just pop this for value. And I can't tell you how many times I thought I was winning a game. Close, but I thought I was winning. And then they dropped a Medibot and popped it. And I'm like, well, they just gained, 12 life between the blocks and the life gain. I'm just like, well, I lost this race. Gosh darn it.
Like, I know my love affair with Medibot Station started when they added Consuming Greed, like in the first revision, I think.
Mm-hmm. All right. Moving on to the next one. What were the most underrated cards? Send for the reserves. I feel like I don't think it was bad. And in general, I feel people thought it was serviceable, but by the end of it, you were happy to run as many of these as you can get your hands on because it literally was good at every point in the game. Yes, 2/1s are not very impressive, but they add up on defense. They add up on offense. You're getting all that off of one card. It never really kind of came together as far as it mattering that there were soldiers. Personally, in my experience, I think maybe once or twice I've seen it matter. Most of them was just the fact that you can make 2 dudes when you needed it, and then later in the game, it was a fine top deck because you're like, oh sweet, I'm just got 6 guys to the board. Like, try to attack me with your big guy anyways. So I thought that card was very impressive. So I think overall, myself and the community had it underrated. Alex?
For me, it was I couldn't really think of a card. I just chose Wire Chewer because I saw them late, and Wire Chewer did a lot of work for me. Finishing off units, finishing off my opponents, killing off annoying, like auto treads when they're still little or whatever. Wire Chewer for me.
Solid choice. I was still hesitant to put those in my deck.
Me too.
Specifically, but I mean, I definitely got blown out a couple times with them.
You don't want like too many.
I've watched Alex play them so many times, and like they overperform like every time. But yeah, underrated. Perfect way to describe Wire Chewer. I picked Medibot Station. We already just talked about it, right? Like,
yeah,
I still think a lot of people underrate this card. Like, I do like get past a lot of these late, which I don't know.
Well, I don't think it went every deck, right? There were some decks that didn't really particularly had a use for Medibot Station unless you just need a 2-drop that you can access later. But most of the decks you're talking about, they had some additional ways to capitalize from Medibot one way or another, whether it's more sack fodder or destroying the relic or something like, or gaining life, etc.
Yeah, I mean, just having a thing that you really don't care at all to sacrifice to a grizzly contest, and then that you can pump out a second one on demand later on or whatever. Like
Mhm.
just that alone really made it pretty good, and combust as well. Like those were two of the better removals in the format. Were those sacrifice based ones? So
I was saying one of the downfalls of filling out the show notes later is like someone else says your thing, so you want to try to come up with a different thing. Because Medibot, for sure, those were going around late. If you wanted a Medibot, you're like, oh, I need a Medibot. There's the Medibot. It was great, and it goes almost in any deck. I think Jedi like one if it's not something
yeah,
capitalizing on relics. If it
exactly.
is, you want like 4. Like bring them on.
All right, fair enough.
Agreed.
What were the most controversial cards? Go ahead, John. You look like you have a spicy answer on this one. Why don't you start
Okay,
us off?
so I said Gatecrash Trooper and like the symmetrical relics, and I said that because I kept seeing opponents play these cards like throughout the format. So I think there must be a swath of the population that thinks these are not only playable but good. Um, for me, that's a huge controversy because I basically think all those cards are just unplayable, like in draft. Period. Like I managed to never put one in any of my decks, and I managed to never lose a game where my opponent ever played any of them. So yeah, that's controversial, I guess.
Yeah, I literally was almost fist pumping whenever my opponent triggered Gate Crash Trooper. I was like, sweet,
Yes.
good, like awesome, thank you. I was like, well, I hope I draw my third. There's my third power, sweet.
Right.
Thank you, opponent. What about you, Alex?
Well, I guess it's just controversial, just because of how powerful it is. I think just auto tread, and probably like the most broken one drop I think I've ever seen in my life. And then Barricade Basher is just like, okay, do I have something that's going to deal with that? If not, I'm dead. It's just like you said earlier, it's very format defining, and for a common and an uncommon, it's like man, it's just a lot of people playing red, so just I don't know. I guess that's controversial to me, darn it.
Fair enough.
See, it's unfortunate too because essentially the meta should correct itself, right? And we're not 100% sure exactly how the packs work as far as the drafts go, but if everyone identifies that fire is the best and people are forcing fire, then inherently the fire decks should be a little weaker because everyone's. I mean, I understand we're not in a pod, but we are kind of sharing the same pools essentially. But yeah, I kind of agree with you. I don't think it ever really felt that way. I mean, I take that back. There have been some drafts where it felt like fire was open and then I just never got a basher. And then there were other times where it's like, hey, what do you know? I got 4 bashers. So I do feel, auto tread. Gosh, we identified that this was kind of a more common than usual X1 format, but I felt like every time my board was nothing but X1s or my hand is when my opponent played auto tread. I'm just like, yeah, so I can't play anything for the rest of this game. Got it. Hope I draw my removal spell. I feel you on that. Mine are a little, I don't know. I feel like mine were pretty controversial just because I was particularly low on these cards, but the community as a whole, especially on Twitch, I felt was higher. And those are Shock Troops and Drifting Drone, which were the 2 Justice 1 drops. And man, Shock Troops and Drifting Drone just spent most of my games as 1/1s and 0/2s that just died as soon as they became relevant or even before that. I saw the power level. I get run over by those cards a handful of times, but I felt like those had to be the high rolls with those cards and what people remembered. But I mean, there have also been times where my opponents have played these cards and they just have done nothing, or they did a little bit that I didn't really care about. And I just started playing more things that were relevant regardless of anything else going on. So I don't know.
I think those are great picks. I agree. Those are controversial, very controversial in the community. Like, yeah, I know some people that are super high on both of those cards, and like, I'm kind of with you. Like, I'm not low on them, but like, I need, like, they're kind of build arounds, right? Like, my deck needs to support those cards for me to actively want to put either of those in the deck. And I did play quite a bit of Drifting Drones in particular. Like I mentioned earlier, shout out to like Argenport, attachments as kind of an archetype I really liked. That was like
Mhm.
one of the better cards in that usually because it's a common. But no, I like I don't think they're great or whatever. Like I know one of the people I would always see running drifting drones was better up in the queues. Like, I think
Yeah, I mean,
he always found a way to make those things work.
yeah, I mean, he definitely like drafting the aggressive decks that their power curve capped off at 3. So I think there they could do some work. But I mean, once again, I would play them on turn 1 or turn 3 and sweet, and they would just sit there forever. And oh, there's my analog munitions. Play one of them on there, and the opponent killed it. And I'm like, all right, great. So yeah, I don't know. Like I'm not gonna blame it in RNG. I like more consistency. I think these cards were very swingy. You either high rolled the shock troops on 1 with the call to arms on 3, or the drifting dome and the Malaga munitions and run over your opponent, or not. What card had your favorite artwork? I said it from the very beginning, and I still, when I went looking through all the cards, I still think this one takes the case, which is it's a shame because I played absolutely 0 of them. But Vicious Rail Driver, which is the giant ballista rail driver gun. I think the artwork on that is just super sweet, really aggressive. I always appreciated it from the very beginning, and yep, I never had a reason to play one. Not a one. I was like, maybe I can get a Siphon or Paladin at some point. Nope. So yeah, that's mine. Alex?
Shiny Daheen Blitz for me.
Yeah, ooh, that's a good one. That one's a really pretty one. I think I have 2 premium ones in my collection. John?
Yeah, I'm on that premium snipe. Like that looks like I don't know, like I play Overwatch, it reminds me of like the Hanamura like Japanese archery scene or whatever, there's like a fallen guy in the back with like it's got the blood effect and then in the foreground like the snow
Mhm.
effect. It's like, 2 different premium effects on the same card. It's legit.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. What were the best build around cards in the set? Yeah, Watchwing support. Hey, I kind of had to think about this one a little bit because there are a handful of build around cards, essentially depending on how you wanted to view it because it was a tribal set. But I feel hands down, everyone just Watchwing support is one of the most broken things you could be doing in this format, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I would say it is a build around pretty much. So like there was definitely some decks where I didn't play it and I had one in my pool.
Yeah,
And I think it was
I
pretty
did it a couple
justice.
times as well. I feel like if you don't have a certain critical mass of attachments one way or another, then you're just essentially putting a Warcry 2 in your deck, which is kind of medium by itself. So, Alex, anything to add? It looks like you put the same thing.
Yeah, I just added like Valk Warp stuff. It was very powerful if you could pull it off in this set, particularly with like Argentport colors.
Mhm.
And it was really fun when you can get it to go off too.
John, what about you?
I know you wrote in consuming greed for me, and like that would be my answer. You're not wrong, but it was not an Empire of Glass technically. So I like build around cards for me. Like honestly, Barricade Basher like is a non-sarcastic answer. Like for me, like when I consider that like a build around, I once like my win rate was very high when I was playing those. When my deck was built to support that strategy, and like when
Mhm.
it wasn't, they just like died to a 1/1 or whatever, and that was it. And I went down 2 cards, or whatever. So like I think that was a good build around for me. And then I think the whole Maveloft Elite and Shock Troops kind of deck, that was that the call to is it call to arms, call to allies, whatever. That was a good build around as well. And then I think the Xenon Mandrakes in particular, like the Venomous Nightshade
Consuming green. Oh yeah, yeah.
yeah, that's the build around for that. I think that was another good one. I think like that's when you had that card, you could really make Mandrakes pop off.
Yeah, if you had enough bashers in your deck, I definitely think you had to take into consideration it as a build around because I know at one point I was Stone Scar and I think I had like 3 bashers and I picked up whatever, let's say a spitting spore spitter and a metal fang, and I was like, I can't play both of these. If I have a chance of discarding 3 cards, I don't see myself being in a position where I could play a 6-drop either.
Right.
So I definitely can't agree with you on there. Was this set a Prince or Popper, John?
Yeah, I mean, when I'm picking martial efficiency over like Dichro, it's a popper set.
Yeah. I'm with you there. Definitely Popper, and looks like Alex agrees. Definitely a Popper set, which, hey, kudos to them, right? That's exactly what we want to see instead of people just, what rare did you high roll,
Yeah.
So there were some fun rares, not going to lie, but yeah, this was very much still kind of definitely in the Popper. It's a bad card, but I love it anyways. It took me a second. I was trying to figure this out back and forth. And then so I went with Bastion Garrison because I drafted a couple times trying to make the Bastion Garrison and send the reserves deck or just soldier deck in general. And I never got the two. I either got the Bastion Garrison. I think one draft I even had two of them and just soldiers was not a thing, or the other way around. But then I remembered From the Heavens. Gosh, I wanted this board wipe to work so bad. I even ran one of those symmetrical cards, the partner agreement, to give us both a justice symbol every turn. And I was like, it's fine, or a justice sigil, because I was like, it's fine because I'm running two From the Heavens. So, and then, oh man, either I had the From the Heavens and never got my ramp, or I got my ramp and never saw my From the Heavens. I was like, So yeah, I think the card is just bad. Even when they dropped it down to 8, it's still just entirely too slow in this format. But I still love it. I mean, getting angels off of a board or Valkyries off of a board wipe always seems sweet. Alex, what about you?
This card is really bad, but I can't help but love it because with this card, I'm always like in Eternal Christmas Land, and that's Brash Flame Spewer.
That's that 0/1.
It's a 0/1 that
flyer
becomes awesome when you put a weapon on it. Yep.
Yeah, I remember when we were having our like draft boot camp for the tournament. One of our teammates, Robot Jellyfish, like I think saw that card in action one time, and I think he like was forcing it and did very well in the tournament. Actually, so he's also a lover of that bad card. I think. For me, it's like a similar bad card, Drifting Drone. Like, you know, and to go with that one, Emerald Overcharger. Like I played both of those cards a surprising amount in this format. I think probably more than most people.
Fair
And that was
enough.
before they buffed Overcharger too. Like I was playing it
where
exactly
they made
as
it
much.
Yeah, initially I was kind of on the card, and then I slowly kept cutting it from my deck till I just stopped playing it. And I mean, it's decent pushing through damage, but I guess I just wasn't aggressive enough.
Maybe.
I'm not sure. Like I saw my opponents do some serious work with it, and I mean, I managed to kill one or two people with it sometimes, but I think it was a little swingy. I never got him when I actually had the Purifier, Forge Purifier, or whatever it was. Like, gosh, man, that thing always seemed to be a 4/4 regen flyer for for 3 on from my opponents, and for me, it was just always a 1/1 regen. That was it every single time. Anywho, speaking of which, the literally I never win with it, but it always seems to beat me card. For me, it's pretty much the entire set. I felt like I low rolled so many things in this format. I lost when I went Basher. Freaking like I had the Shoal Stirrings. I had a deck with 2 Shoal Stirrings. I would always draw them with nothing in the void. Like it just. But probably the card that beat me the most and never worked out for me was Call on Allies.
Sure.
I felt like my opponents always popped that off when they had 3 or 4 guys on the board, soldiers, and 2 of them were flyers, or they go, 1 drop, 2 drop into this, and then they have 2 7/7s. I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I just never did that card ever perform for me. So yeah. All on Allies is my my bane on this one. What about you, John?
Yeah, I guess for me it would be Hardiness. Like, freaking Hardiness, man. Like, and I always knew my opponent had it. It's just like because it's like turn 1 primal. Then there's a pause or whatever. It's like okay, so they have Hardiness. So like I know they have this card the whole game, and yeah, they get. It's like there's never an opportunity for me to not get wrecked by it. Like, I don't know, like anytime my opponents were playing a hardiness deck, they always had hardiness, and it always destroyed me. And then I think most of the times I tried to do it, it was just like it was just the dorky card that it looks like or whatever. So yeah.
Fair enough. Alex, you got one?
Well, I mean, like, you had put the card that basically is that I've never ever got to work either. The Call on Allies is just, I'm in the highlight reel of people going off with that card, like 4 units.
Two of them are shock troops.
Yeah, and just exactly. A couple of the 2/2 guy that gets even more big, and then
they had the 0-3, John's favorite bird when it was in the format as well. They have those in play. You're just like, oh my god.
Yeah.
They
there you go.
They draw all the cards off of it because they have that blue 3/3 guy. But I thought of one while you were talking. It's like a card that like seemed to work for my opponent way better than it worked for me, and that was a Fatal Misstep. Like, I never had. I'm not saying it never worked for me, but like 8 times out of 10, it's my opponent's getting the better of me with that card than I am with my opponent, because I tend to like try to use all my power. I like don't leave power up. Like, I guess more of an aggressive player, just play your cards or whatever. But yeah, Fatal Misstep. There you go. I thought of one.
Sure.
Nice. Yeah, I can get behind that one for sure. Like, you hold it for 4 turns, nothing happens, and then another game, you're like, all right, here, sweet, I get to play my bomb off the top, and your opponent's like, oh yeah, I just happen to have 2 power open.
The opponent can't have a Fatal Misstep again, can they? Oh yeah, they can, sure.
What was my opponent played this, so now I must win or quit Eternal forever. Storm Halt Warden. We thought this card was bad in the set review. It was bad the very few times I saw my opponents play it, and I never could justify putting this card. I'd rather just put a sigil in my deck than to put this card in my deck.
Yep.
And yeah, truth be told, I think it was played against me twice, and once I just literally let the thing hit me. I was like, I'm at 25. Sure, I'll take 3 and just keep beating you down. And then the other time I was like, sure. Like, by the time I was like, sure, if you want to swap a unit from your hand for a unit in your market by this, like, it was just bad. The card is just bad. Don't play that card ever. I think they even did something to it, didn't they? Did they like lower the cost or buff it?
I don't think that one got a buff. I could be wrong, but I don't think so.
No, you might be right. It might be just, yeah, I literally think I only saw it played against me twice. And once was a person that was a decent drafter. So I was like, all right. So, oh well, that's mine. What about you, Alex?
The agreement cards, any of the agreement cards. It's like, yeah.
The symmetrical relics.
Relics. And, I faced a few of them when we had the influx of constructed players before the
Yes.
the draft championship, because they're all like trying to go crazy with those cards. But yeah, I played like 4 during that week or whatever. But yeah, it's those cards for sure.
Yeah, they're barely playable and constructed, and you can cater your entire deck to it. In limited, there's just no way you can make that not be a good thing for your opponent, or be better for you than it is for your opponent. Because at the very least, you're spending a card and playing the power for it, and then your opponent just benefits. So, John,
it would be Malaga League Diver for me, but like I don't actually recall it actually seeing anyone play this. Thankfully.
Oh my god, you're right. Yeah, I've never seen anyone play that card either.
Good job, Eternal Community. Way to go there. But however, like, we got to have some words about this Gatecrash Trooper here. Like, I already mentioned it earlier. I did not lose one game to an opponent playing this card. And like you said, fist pumps when they're playing this. You're just like, yes, 3 cards. And like, that the card they just drew was terrible. And so they're probably like the next one they drew was probably also terrible. So yeah, no, like that's the card for me for that.
Yep, you ain't wrong. You are not wrong. What was the biggest groan test? The Orange John's terms. Oh my god. I mean, Alex, I just read yours. Martial efficiency and auto tread. And once again, I felt like anytime my hand was all X1s and I had 2 X1s on the board, which is kind of typical in this format, it just they were like, oh, sweet, turn 3 auto tread, kill both your things. I'm like, oh my God. And then martial efficiency. You can't even play around the card, right? There's just so much flexibility to the card that you could be like, yeah, I feel like they have martial efficiency. Like, what are you going to do, right? Because they could spread the curses however they want. They could pump whoever they want. It's just, you're like, I was winning, and now I'm way behind. Alex, what's yours?
Well, I think like the opponent plays a fire sigil, and then you're like, okay, here we go again with another fire matchup.
Great, about to get bashed again. Sweet.
About to get bashed again.
Turn 1 auto tread. Let's see it. Okay, well, don't have much.
So it was just like, while it was a fun format for me, it was like a little repetitive. Those 5/5s. I think I've had enough 5/5 for 3 for a while.
Yeah.
Funny.
I also said, auto tread as well as like the third basher in a row. Like that even happened to me like during the draft tournament at one point. And then I also, shout out to getting Valk warped out of your mind.
Yeah, no joke, right?
Yeah.
Somebody like exploded on me with heavy artillery, and I was like, every time I had heavy artillery, both in constructed and limited, I never warped that thing one time.
Yeah.
It was either on the top of my deck when I had 3 power, or I just played a Valkyrie. I already spent my power and I couldn't play it, or I already had a weapon. I was just, oh my God. But then every time they every time they played it, it was just yeah, exactly that. I was just like, all the value.
Like the worst is usually you were like a lot of times you're probably able to like deal with the Valkyrie like to prevent the warping too, but you're like, I can take 1 damage over 10 turns. Like I'll deal with that more efficiently when I can play my gravity glove and make it much bigger, right? You're like trying to get some value, and then you get reverse valued with the freaking Valkyrie warp. Like, ugh.
What was the most frustratingly bad card to lose to? I don't know why I need to split this one up. And then let's just go with that. What was the most frustratingly bad card to lose to? Metalcraft Cadet for me. I guess this was another controversial card for me. I just a 1/1 for 2, a 1/1 flyer for 2 just never impresses me. And yes, it gives essentially a Warcry buff to something, but it's random. So then, for me, it'd be a card that's irrelevant, and then it's like a bomb for my opponent. But still, it just, I don't know. I never thought that card was very impressive. And oh gosh, that card, or they would top deck it late in the game, which is another issue I have with it. But it just happens to be in a position where I'm either low on life or I don't have a way to deal with it. So they just ping me to death, and I'm like, oh. So yeah, that's my most frustratingly bad card to lose to. What about you, John?
Skyguard Sentinel. Like I had a few times in the format, I think, where like an opponent did a Wasteland broker into like they brokered Skyguard Sentinels. Those games were very annoying. Like when you finally make it through the first one of these when you're like a deck with a bunch of flyers or whatever, and then they they play the second one and it has that market icon come up, and you're like, oh God, I have to fight through 3 more of these things. Like, yeah. That was not a card that made many of my decks. Occasionally.
Fair. Alex, what about you?
I have been known to be incinerated by bronzers.
I really? What?
Incineration.
Yeah, I've been lethaled by incineration. I think twice. Once they had it in their main deck, and one time they pulled it out of their market. Yeah, it's like it's so frustrating because you're dead, and you're like, yeah, that was a bad card. I can't even redeem myself right now. I need to just turn this game off right now.
Be like, I'm gonna go adult or do something responsible right now. What card will you not miss playing against? Auto tread. I think it. Like, I'm not hating on auto tread, but God, did I lose this card in just atrocious fashion sometimes. Or no, not even sometimes. Every time.
It feels bad.
Every time.
Like, it's like a 1/1. You're like, surely I can deal with this 1/1. And then it just like wrecks you. And you're just like,
And
Even
then
like
you know,
winning with it feels dirty and bad. I don't like the
You're
feeling
not
I get.
wrong.
what about all right? Yeah, Alex, you got auto tread and basher again.
Yep. There's a lot of love hate there with those. I mean, I'm gonna draft them. Don't get me wrong,
Yep.
but I also hate them.
Yeah, fair enough. And then John.
Yeah, I won't miss playing against Vinegrafter. Like, anytime an opponent played a Vinegrafter, like, you could almost never deal with it before they were able to activate it. And you just know whatever they're about to play after that is just going to be even worse. Like, ugh.
Vine grafter is a really good way to identify how weak your removal or inadequate your removal is. I think there've been a couple times where I draft a deck and I'm like, oh sweet, you know, I got pump spells here, I got a couple of damage spells here. Like I'm sitting pretty, you know, maybe a fight card. I'm like, I'm doing all right. And my opponent goes Vine grafter. I'm like, oh yeah, all my removal is damage based.
Yeah.
All of
Came
it.
here for the
Great.
Basher hate. And then you're bringing this crap? Ah.
Yeah. Like, well, this Scythe Slash and Rampages are looking pretty garbo in my hand right now. Sweet.
Mm-hmm.
On that note, what card really annoyed the crap out of you? Which is crazy because I like this card, but God, it just Side Street Monitor. It's a 2/1 flyer that shouldn't be that big of an issue, but I swear every time my opponent played it, it was just exactly what they needed to wreck my day. Either I had a bunch of, you know, X2 flyers that I was beating down with, and that thing just stops it, or it stops my overwhelm guy, so I can't kill him for lethal, or I don't have a flyer and they just keep pinging with it, and I don't draw my 1 damage thing, or I have a Ruinous Burst in hand, but I can't pop the regen. That card just... I like the card. Don't get me wrong. But gosh, did it do so much work on my opponent's side. Practically 83% of the time, the card was just absolutely backbreaking. And then I think you guys saw it at one point. I was doing so well in complete control of this game. And then my opponent replica selled it.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah,
I was just,
nasty.
yeah. And I just, Alex, save me. Talk about your card, please.
So Moldermuck is like the most annoying card in the entire world. Like I'll play it. Don't get me wrong, but like when your opponent throws one of those down, you're like, gosh darn it.
Yeah.
You're like, you're gonna have to go through some mucks. You know, it mucks up the board for sure.
It really does.
You're just sitting there trying to figure out how the next couple of turns are going to go for you. You're like, all right, how am I even going to deal with this?
Yeah, it takes so many resources, you know.
And then, like, when you're finally done dealing with it, it's like, oh, by the way, here's 2 Spore Spitters that are already turned on.
Yeah, and like a lot of times when they were playing Muck, they would have a Fluctuate Reality to go with it.
And you got like ways to boost
or a
it.
Vine Grafter.
Or you know, a lot of things you could sacrifice the 1/1s at the end of the end of the run. Good cards. It's annoying.
I don't even know. I don't even remember if I put Fluctuate Reality down as that probably could have gone for one of my most controversial cards as well. RNG is not kind to the Jedi.
It's just fickle mistress.
Oh God, there was one time specifically that I remember where I was like, they had 3 units, and I think I don't remember what the case was, but I just needed them for not one of them to be a flyer, right? It was just like, yeah, as long as they can't hit me in the air, I could block, survive, and kill them on the crackback. And I do it, and all 3 of them were flyers. I was just like, you've got to be kidding me. Or I've upgraded mine to like Garbo legendaries, you know, the legendaries are just pointless if you don't have a deck around them or whatever. That card is just I don't even want to talk about it. Anywho, and then John, what's your last, what card really annoyed the crap out of you?
Yeah, I picked Auto Tread there. That card is annoying. like we already mentioned.
Yeah, fair enough. Easy Sunset Show.
There's a lot of overlap with these cards.
Yeah.
What was the bombiest bomb? What was the card you hope to open in pack 1 in your sealed pool? Or, hey, it's top 8 of the draft open. I feel like it's not pretty easy, but I went low hanging fruit for me. I went with the Speaking Circle. I just that card. It's great and constructed. It's great. It's even worse than limited because there's way less ways to deal with it. I mean, I guess when they dropped it down to 3, you can deal with it with overgrowth, whatever.
And they buffed Laser Blast to shoot it too.
Yeah, true.
But
that, I mean, but once again, you had to have those cards in hand.
sure. No, it's
So, and then it just goes in every deck.
yeah, I agree completely. I also picked Speaking Circle, but like after that, Martial Efficiency is the bombiest bomb for me, I think.
There was a joke with like Extinction talking about train wrecking your draft to take martial efficiency, and you know what? After doing it like twice, that is 100% correct. If you could play a martial efficiency, you just play it.
Yep.
It just will never disappoint you.
Yeah, you splash it. It's great.
What about you, Alex?
For me, it's a circle, right?
Mhm.
Copying you guys there on that one. It's pretty easy on that. Decro was pretty bomb when you dropped it, and then Lord Stire's Tower actually was. I did not mind having one of those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's actually maybe even better than Circle. Actually, I like if it was also factionless, I'd say it is, and it would be better than Circle probably in draft just because it's cheaper and it like really impacts the game like immediately. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think just because Circle goes in literally every deck, I think it gets the nod just barely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what tipped it for me. All right, what's the best common in each color? We could do one color at a time. So I went Barricade Basher for fire. I think we all agree, right?
Yep, Basher.
Okay. For time, Send for the reserves.
Agreed.
Yep, also.
Justice, Side Street Monitor.
I agree. After the Send to Market nerf. That was the best Justice common.
That was a good clarification because I think I agree with that as well. But yeah, Side Street Monitor.
Yeah, I agree. I at 5, I would happily draft as many as I could. And I've been known to run 4 in a deck. I didn't feel bad about it at all. I mean, granted, those decks that was my top end, like my 5 curve was the Send the Markets. Primal, Ghastly Perfume for me.
Yeah, I said Maveloft Elite.
Yeah, it's solid. Solid, Alex.
I said Frostbite. I liked having 3 or 4 of those.
Really?
There's a lot of the decks for me that did the best had multiple Frostbites if they had
That's
Primal.
probably the Primal common I played the most. So I don't think Alex is wrong there.
Huh. Maybe obviously I was doing something wrong because I was not particularly high on Frostbite. I didn't feel like it was completely backbreaking when my opponent played it, and I just the couple of times I had it in my deck, it was underperforming. But maybe I just didn't draft it aggressive enough or play it correctly. And then Shadow Shoal Dredger.
Shoal Dredger as well.
Dredger.
Yep, awesome. And yeah, I like the fact that you added factionless in there, Alex. And I agree. I think audience for sure. I mean, they did a great job on the simulacrum. I think they were fantastic, all of them. Oh well, no, that's right. The stupid raccoon, the trash panda.
But that's
the
a
trash
1/1.
panda is like the one trash card.
Not really its fault, you know.
I honestly always forget it's part of that cycle, but yeah, I think Okasa's audience, and then the simulacra, the sellsword, the Valkyrie, and the
Mandrake, the 4-drop.
The Mandrake were all fantastic. Yeah, that Mandrake was great. That thing was so good. The 3/3 decay just made it really good, and then the plunder ability when you wanted it to made it even better because you could just literally play it out there. You didn't have to worry about, well, do I want to plunder yet or not? Like, that card was really strong. They did a great job on that.
Yeah, those are all good except for that 1-drop. Yeah, but I agree with Alex. Like audience, I think.
Yeah, audience was just absolutely fantastic. I really don't think there was a wrong number of those to have in your deck. You can play 1, and I think you could even play probably up to 4. That may or may not be pushing it. I'm not really sure because they're good everywhere. They're good early if you need power. They're good. You can kind of use them in installment plans whenever you have the extra power.
Yeah, I think fine. It's slow, but if you have 3 or 4, but it's like inevitability. It's just slow, but it's not bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you could throw off your opponent's curve if they think you're going to play the giant on or the golem on 5, the sentinel on 5, and you just don't. So that's the thing, because they know, right? It's known information. Like they see it go into your hand. Like, okay, they have a 5/5 or 5 in their hand, and they may try to play their game around that coming down at a certain time. And when it doesn't, it could essentially put you ahead a little bit, at least on tempo. What's the best uncommon for each color? And then someone put dual faction, which is pretty legit. I like that as well. Fire, auto tread.
Yeah, auto tread.
Yep.
All right. Time, Goliath fly trap was mine.
Yeah, I agree with that as well.
Yeah, like I went in there and really looked to see if there was another one, but no, it is Flytrap. Yep.
Like there was probably an argument for his Cobra Gear.
It's common.
It's a common. Okay. Yeah, then I can't think of another
Maybe
time card that really.
The 1/3 after the buff, but I never really had a chance to use it. Really though.
Yeah, that card never impressed me. Transform. I know Plunder counts as transform, and so do the Fluctuate Reality cards or whatever. But it just, I don't know. It never really came together for me. Justice. Martial efficiency, right?
Martial efficiency.
Yep.
All right. So Primal. Okay, here we go. Primal. I went with Forbidden Tree though, because obviously I told you I think Fluctuate Reality would be a good argument for this, but Forbidden Tree is Forbidden Tree every time. You know exactly what you're getting out of that card, and it's normally a removal spell at least the turn you play, or essentially when your opponent attacks into it, and it could easily end the game. It's great if you could bring it back in any form or fashion. So I went with Forbidden Tree.
Yeah, you can't go wrong there. It was so good. Like, if you were playing Primal, you loved having Forbidden Tree in your deck. I just picked Fluctuate Reality because it was like a single pip of influence and was a great answer for bashers. And I think, it was a card I splashed in the format. So for me, it was that's the card for me.
Yeah, it was difficult too. If you're at 5, you just, if you're at 5 and your opponent, they have a flyer, you just hit the flyer to get it out of the air. Or if you didn't have anything else, you're like, cool, I'll get rid of your best thing and upgrade my worst thing and see what happens.
Yeah, like the times it was not great for me was when I was already just kind of way behind. Like I was already getting bashed for a few turns kind of before I drew it or something. And like maybe they had a weapon on the basher or two. And then like when I transform it, it turns into a flyer, which is wearing a weapon, and it just kills me anyway. Like that was like, but that was like a rare thing. I think a lot of times it would just be a very clean answer for a basher, or whatever regen unit they just buffed with the Vine Grafter and things like that, like overperformed for me.
Gotcha. Alex?
So I'd been bitten by RNG enough times on the Fluctuate Reality to push it for me to be the Vicious Overgrowth.
That's funny. So we were just differing on Primal in both common and uncommon. That's fun.
Yeah, that at least if anything, we're consistent with each other at the very least. Yeah, I think Vicious Overgrowth was a solid card for sure, especially once again going back to the whole X1 thing. It was a little poor against regen, but it was a good card to finish off units and roll over damage and break weapons and things like that. So yeah, I liked it. Shadow Vine Grafter.
Yeah, Vine Grafter. Easy.
Grafter.
Yeah, that card was just busted, and thanks to John, I learned that it's completely splashable as well. And then, I like the fact that you guys went with dual faction cards, and I do think out of all of them, I like Deathwing, but man, Metal Fang you could still lose the game when you play Deathwing, but Metal Fang, it would stabilize you, it would get you back in the game if you were behind, it would close out the game if you're ahead. Metal Fang was fantastic.
Yep. Yeah, that's for me as well. Metal Fang. Like I agree with that. 2/3 was just a little too easy to remove. I think for most opponents, like just a gravity glove will take it out real easy.
Yep. So it definitely was. I think those were the only two that really stood out to me. Drawing blank on the rest of them. Like the Mandrakes were kind of okay, but not great because they still required some help and whatnot.
Yeah, Metal Fang didn't need any building around. It's just stands alone, and you'd splash it if you were playing one of the colors.
Yeah, exactly. And the Sentinel was good early and not so great late, etc., etc.
Yep.
All right. What was the mythic uncommon for the set? And legendary comment. I think it's pretty. I mean, martial efficiency. I think we've talked about it enough. I don't even think I have to go into it. So let's
Not
move
even
right
close.
on. Yeah. What was the worst card in the set? The biggest blank, the most last pick. This one I actually had to go looking back and forth a couple times. But so I guess I finished off with Shadowfang Valkyrie, which is the card that I kept giving my opponents when I would fluctuate reality them, and then they would keep giving me helpful doorbots. But it's the 1/1 flyer Valkyrie for 0 that can't block. So yeah, that's what I thought the worst card and the most last pick card. I could be wrong though. What do you think, John?
Like, I don't remember seeing that one like literally last in the pack very often. Probably because it's for some reason an uncommon. So like, I feel like last picked in packs, I often saw like either a Blackout the Skies or Exotic Purchase, which
Ooh, purchase is a good
like
one. Yeah,
those were
yeah.
both hilariously kind of playable, right? But not, they weren't really splash cards, and like if you're playing those, you're only putting one of in any deck, period, right? So I think that's why those would end up being last picked in a lot of packs. And then like I think Shadow Sea Rising is like a rare that is like the most like past rare probably in the set. Like I don't know, that's like the worst of those symmetrical effect relics. It's like so bad.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
it's like
I agree.
Alex's number one pack open, I think.
Yeah, I was going to say just that in general. I mean, the Shadow one I think was the most, but just the Agreement series for me, those were just not that they were pick last because I think people like Shiftstone picked them before it would go to last
Exactly.
pick. But if Shiftstone wasn't around, that card is like the most unplayable card. Like I'll put way more other bad commons in my deck before I put that rare in there, you know.
Yep.
And then so many I was like, okay, this draft isn't gonna have a pack one pick one rare again in it, but good thing it was a pauper set because you can build really good decks without the rares.
Yep.
Sorry about that.
Which card was the most begrudgingly playable? This was actually another hard one for me because I felt all iterations of this draft format, you were not hurting on playables. I think it was more about trying to identify the 5 cuts you had to make for your deck than it was trying to make sure you had enough playables for your deck. So I went looking, and I think I may have ran like 1 arms race in the main at some point.
Mm.
Yeah, and I feel like I'm reaching. I feel like I'm reaching there, but like I said, this one was a little tough. I was going back and forth. I'm like, man, I don't remember like the bad cards I just didn't play. So I think, like I said, there might have been one deck where Arms Race was I had to main it, and maybe I even cut it for a sigil. I don't remember, but what about you, John?
So like the answer for like the card I felt the worst about playing that I actually played in the format was Pollen Sprayer. Like what a dorky 4-drop or whatever. Like, but I definitely played it in 1 or 2 decks, and yeah, it filled its role barely. Like I think the card I begrudgingly played the most though would have been Valkyrie Emulator, because that one made a lot of my decks. But I think every time it was like begrudgingly. I was like, man, why can't you be a better card? But it's playable. Whatever.
See, and I liked both those cards, but I'm also not great at this format, so maybe that's why. I don't know. It took me a while to come around the Pollen Sprayer because I thought the same thing, but it felt like every time my opponent played 1 or 2, I was just like, how am I going to get through this? I just, and then every time I played it, they're like, oh, here's my Basher, or like, hey, here's a Decay unit or Deadly. I'm like, oh, well, crap. But I don't know. I don't know. I felt like the card was pretty decent. I don't think it was busted. I'm not like, yeah, fist pumping. We got there, boys. But I don't know. And yeah, I can see what you're talking about of Emulator. I think I liked it for the consistency and the Valkyrie
It's
Warp.
such a
but
boring card,
yeah,
like
fair.
begrudged. I'm begrudged.
Alex?
For me, it was a exotic purchase because it's
Yeah.
like it goes in almost no decks, but it's begrudgingly playable. You can have a market actually that can use it. So, like Blackout the Skies for 6, it's like I think John, you said that it's kind of like a a cut ties then, you
Yeah,
know,
it's
for a
literally
flying
just cut
unit.
ties at that point, as long as the unit you wanted to kill was a flyer like that. They just had the one Dichro on the board. Yeah,
Right?
cut ties.
Or like if you happen to pick up one of those rares that draws you cards for the amount for how big your relic is. So like those two cards are like kind of perfect for each other. So if you happen to get that rare, pick up a exotic purchase, then it becomes a little bit less than begrudgingly playable. But yeah.
All right, nice. Is there a card you will miss drafting? It was Send to Market pre-nerf for me. I just love that card. I pretty much picked every one that I saw. But after the nerf it, I think it was still playable, but it's definitely not as powerful. I really liked the play pattern of Shoal Dredger. I liked it a lot. I don't know. I was a big fan of that card, so it's probably Shoal Dredger for me. Well, I mean, I'm gonna miss both of them, but I just liked it. And then Shoal Dredger was one of those cards where you really, I guess technically you could have too many of them in a deck, but they kind of helped each other out, so you didn't quite care either. So
I don't know if I ever had to, you know,
Yeah.
I don't know if I ever found that limit really.
Yeah, I don't think I ever drafted more than 4. I think 4 was the most I ever got. I think there might have been one time where I could have drafted a 5th, but I needed either 2 drops or removal or something, and I ended up passing on the 5th one or something like that. Or I passed on the first one and then kind of went into them. I don't remember, but yeah, I think 4 was the most I've had in a deck. What about you, Alex?
For me, it will be Scrap Metal Fury. Mostly Scrap Metal Fury. I love that unit.
Yeah, it's a good one.
And then just all the grafters. Like, I love all of those. They were so great.
Yeah, you're not wrong. They definitely added an interesting dynamic to it. John?
Yeah, specifically Vine Grafter for me. I just loved having that card in my draft decks. Like, it just was so good every time. And like the markets, like I just felt so good with my Vine Grafter markets. Like the Shadow Market cards were so good. The units like that it would buff were always so impactful.
Speaking of Vine Grafters, next one, what was the Johnniest card, the Jediest card, and the Darthest card? And well, John, for you, I picked Vine Grafter.
yeah, you got me on that one. I think it's like it's a little bit tricky. It's resilient. It's like it's powerful. It lets you like really, you know, tailor what you're doing in any game and tailor, you know, it's like some draft like deck building thing, and like I'm thinking about my market the whole time I'm drafting. I just love that card. Yeah, you got me with that one. Perfect.
Yeah. Then with Alex, I went with Passionate Stonehammer. It's like the flame spear that you talked about earlier, except actually good.
Yeah, I think that's a good one for Alex there. Like, I don't know if I was gonna pick one for you, it might be like I don't know if you had like great success with it or whatever, but like Barricade Basher seems like a pretty Jedi card to me.
Yeah, I can roll with it. I mean, I did my fair share of it. I don't think I was as busted as some of the better drafters did with it, but I mean, I like that card. I was happy to take it for sure. It was surprisingly deeper in play pattern than you think. I mean, obviously you play the Basher on 3. That's what it's designed to do, but there were some times where you had to really decide on what to discard, how you could discard, you know, whether to play it, you know, another one on 3 or 4, or I'm sorry, 4 or 5. Like, I think there was some serious play pattern to the card. There were just some games where you just slammed it 3, 4, and 5 if you could, and you would win. You know, when to use your removal to continue to stress your opponent's defenses, when to just let it 2 for 1 them. So yeah, I can roll with that. The next one was, what's the Jedi's soapboxiest card? And I'll be honest with you, I don't feel like there was one this format. I talked about my controversial cards earlier, but I feel like the community was controversial on them as well. I don't think there was a card where I was on my soapbox like fighting the good fight for, you know?
Yeah, I couldn't really think of one. I also thought it was hilarious that you've like basically embraced the Sunset Priest lifestyle this format because Shoal Dredgers and whatnot.
I mean, yeah, it is what it is. The card works in the deck, right? I mean, if I could use full,
it's a good role player.
Yeah. So, I mean, granted, once again, to stand by my position, there were a couple times where it milled exactly my shoal stirrings. So I was like, thanks. Appreciate that, Sunset Priest. You wrote exotic purchase on here, but I don't know. Did you really feel like you had to kind of break it down a lot, or were you just reaching?
I was reaching. I was like, man, I couldn't really think of one. Like, did I rant about this? I don't know.
I didn't remember you ranting about anything really.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Easy enough. We can move on. Not a big deal. Not all these questions are gonna be answered, so that's all right. And consider it a good thing, I guess. Good set design. What card do you still have to read when it's cast against you? I think we all agreed the techniques, right?
Yeah, lots of words.
I can't even. I know the blue and green one counters. That's about it.
Well, that's the tricky thing too, right? Because the Skycrag one, the Huru one, both counters. So you have to read. All right,
you're right. There's different counter ones.
I could probably write 92% of the words on all of them and get them correct, but like,
I don't doubt that John could do that.
It's not fast enough. Like in a game, I have to read the card every time in a game just to be efficient.
And then Rotor Scavenger, which is that 2/1 Grenadin with decay, but then if something dies, you get to ping something, or does it get the +1, or
does it have to be a
die for
Grenadin or something? I think.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah,
exactly. I couldn't tell you specific. I just know that something happens, it gets a +1/+1, and then something happens with certain things, it deals 1 damage as well. Then it has decay. It just I had to read that card every time. That was probably one of the cards that I thought was good. Performed better than it did, and it just never did.
Another one like that for me was Blight Petal. It's like something sacrifice and then buff something, and I don't know. And then like on top of that, when they play it, it's like, wait, that's a 3/3. Like, double on that one, because that's not one I saw very often at all. And then a rare for me was Overmax Wand. It's like a 3/3 weapon that words.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
It does stuff. I don't know. Sometimes it'll damage something. I gotta read that one.
Yeah, fair. I think it buffs spells in your hand if you attack, maybe?
I don't think that's right at all. But
I was just like, I'd rather just have a rail driver because I could put it in my market.
Rail driver.
Yeah, it's a blue rail driver.
Yeah.
With words on it, like you said.
Flavor text. From a design/development aspect, how did this set fare? How were the mechanics? What were some of the wins and the losses? I give it a 6 out of 10. Don't get me wrong, it was a fun format, and I enjoyed drafting all the iterations of it. My issue was especially after having the open primer, I feel like they were selling it as a tribal format. And minus, I think in the first iteration of the format, where maybe you had about 40% of the people doing the synergy thing, and I felt like some of it was forced, right? Because we were taking low value cards higher because we're like, oh, it's a Sentinel, or oh, it's a Mandrake. That it just never really came together. And obviously when we did our review kind of in the second or third iteration, I don't remember now because they threw an extra one because of the open, where we were just completely off of synergy tribes altogether and just draft multiple colors, draft the best cards. So I think from that perspective, I think I gave it a 6 out of 10 because it missed the mark on there. That's fair. Know we've brought up Basher a couple times already, so that's one card in this format that kind of defined it. So that's a little bit narrow as well. But I do think that they did a decent job with like the draft packs and some of the other things going on in the format there were ways of dealing with Basher, but the fact that you were forced to make sure you could deal with Basher, I think gave it a little bit of a nick, right? You couldn't just ignore that Basher was in the format and hope you got there. And I think that's why we didn't see too many of these slower, grindier decks, unless you had the removal and the deadly stuff to kind of back it up in the beginning, because the aggressive decks were so powerful. But then I do appreciate, I think the mechanics were great. I still like regen. It made some playstyles difficult, but I still liked it. Thought regen was solid. What was the other mechanic we saw from this? Was it just the grafters? Was it regen and the grafters?
Like right? market matters, kind of, like...
Yeah. Which the fate cards, a bit of a miss, but I get it. I get it. It was less about drawing them and more about keeping them in the market, so you knew when to draw them. So I guess that was a win. I think they just did a great job with the grafters. Grafters were absolutely phenomenal for limited. There was a lot of decisions on when to go to the market. Did you want to buff a unit? Did you want to wait, play them on 2 to activate them on 3? Wait till 5 so you could play them and activate them immediately. I thought it was great. So I think overall, and I honestly never got bored of drafting the set, to be completely honest. I may have gotten bored of some of the gameplay, which I don't know. I don't necessarily quite consider it the same thing. It is just kind of like what you said earlier, John or Alex, where it's like, okay, I guess we're doing the Basher on 3 thing. Let's see how this game plays out. But it wasn't enough for me to be like, oh god, I don't want to draft today because people are got Bashers on 3, you know. Mm-hmm. So that's where I sat on it. What do you think, John?
That's like I like that you're like keeping them honest with that, right? Because you're not wrong. They tried to, like, especially like you mentioned that article is like such a disconnect from like how I felt the format played the whole time, and then what they're trying to say it is. Like I agree with that take a lot. But
give me 1 second. Sorry to interact.
No
interject. I just want to say this before I forget. Shout out to Eternal or to Direwolf for doing these open articles, like the primers.
Yeah.
I keep forgetting. I mean to put it in the show notes. I don't. So just shout out to Direwolf. I think it is great that they're doing that, and they're doing these winner interviews during the opens and stuff like that. Shout out to them. They're definitely bringing it. I know the community waited a long time for the organized play announcement, but I think they've done a phenomenal job of it this year. So shout out to them. Okay, my bad, John. I just wanted to say it before I forgot. So please continue.
No problem. Yeah, we haven't really talked about that, so that's fine. Yes, I guess I like the format. I liked all iterations of it. My favorite was that 4 to 5 faction, play what you want bonanza. Like I just love formats like that. But yeah, I liked all of them. The whole Basher thing, like it didn't like grind me down at all. Like I don't know, I just kind of was okay with building my deck and drafting with that in mind. They had enough support, I think, in the packs where you could do that with any color combination. Or you could just be the Basher deck, and I was fine with that. And I'm not normally like an aggressive player, but I kind of embraced it for this format and had a lot of success with it. Like, I thought the format was just kind of balanced pretty good in general, like compared to the last few, where I just never really like, as much as I liked playing Basher and liked Fire and Justice, whatever. Like I would play any color and any color combination, like if it was open, and it was like that basically the whole time for me. And like, yeah, we mentioned regen. I think that was like a very good mechanic. It proved to be really strong and, impacted the format like every game basically. For a lot of reasons. Like I also loved the factionless and, tribe oriented plunder cycle we talked about earlier. But I think I agree with you, Jedi, on the general tribal and tribal related synergies. Like that whole thing was kind of medium, and ultimately I feel like didn't quite get there, especially like I think you said it perfectly. Like the first format was the closest to that, and then it just kind of went away from that for the whole rest of the time. And like, yeah, ultimately on average, I think you'd just be best off playing good cards instead of speculating on high synergy picks to come together during the draft most times. But yeah, sometimes when you're in a wide open lane, you could like actually successfully play a fringe archetype, and that I did get to do that occasionally, where it's like, okay, man, this Amplify Matters is just so open here, like, and you just got so many support cards, like it was insane. A lot of times that wouldn't come together, and some of the archetypes were like that, where if it just wasn't insanely open, you probably didn't want to like be that much into the synergy category. But I don't know. Like overall, I think it was like a 8 out of 10 for me. Really enjoyed it.
Nice. Alex, round us off.
They're short and sweet here a little bit. So I think they really hit it out of the park with the making the market matter for limited in a way more meaningful way than it ever was before. It added like a new skill check, because the market wasn't something that your deck necessarily had or even needed per se, but a lot of players would like force cards that gave them bad access to bad market cards. And yeah, I mean, like it's bad if you force it, but it did open up the market I mean, I never used to really play with markets, right? Unless you had the merchants or whatever. And then regen was a really cool mechanic. Like kind of like Aegis, damage Aegis or whatever. It was kind of annoying. It created more options for you on the battlefield. The factionless units, the Simulacre, helped smooth out your curve and your power because of the plunder aspect. Those were a big success for limited. They really helped you kind of like almost never really. It's not like a train wreck proof, but it's like they really helped you stay away from train wrecks in a way, if that makes sense. And then it's a 8 out of 10 for me for sure. As Limited said, it was really fun. I'm definitely ready to move on though to a new set.
Nice. Yeah, you guys have made great points. I can get behind that. Actually, Alex, your opinions were actually a really good segue to the last one. What did this format teach you? How did this format make you better at limited? What are the takeaways? And pretty much the 2 points that you hit, I think I didn't learn anything about drafting synergies, and maybe it's just the way my decks played out, but I gave up on it. I really did. I was like, that's it. I'm done. I'm not going to try to be the Mandrake deck. I'm not going to try to be the Soldiers deck. I don't care what people are saying. I'm just bad at it. And a part of me, actually, now that I think about it, could be part of that self-correcting thing I talked about, where I think maybe as more people started to drift away from the synergy decks and just drafting good decks, it made it harder for people to draft the synergy decks, because it was harder to be like, oh, sweet, I got this Mandrake 4th pick, so Mandrake's is open, right? We're at the beginning of the format where everyone thought it was tribal. People would try to identify a lane and stay in it. So you could essentially pick up all the soldiers, yada yada, and then we just didn't see that towards the end of it. But anywho, I digress. The biggest thing is pretty much what you said. Just with all the plunder mechanics, I think till this day, as much plundering as I've done, I still don't have a solid formula or science about it. I think every single time I plunder, or not every single time, but probably about 70% of the time I plunder, there's still a decision to be made that I have to think about, versus just kind of, hey, it's turn 3, I need my 3rd power, I guess I'll just plunder. Mm-hmm. And even then, there's still an extent to like, okay, what exactly do I plunder? Do I automatically plunder my most expensive card, or maybe something I don't think I'm going to need, or something I don't have the influence for, et cetera, et cetera. So that was a great learning point for me, and something I'm still building on. And then, like you said, just pretty much everything you said about markets, taking that in consideration when you're drafting, when you're deck building, right? When you're trying to things out, like, hey, I have 2 grafters in the same faction, so let me put my best card from that faction in the market instead, or vice versa. Hey, I should be cutting cards from this faction because they could go to the market. So yeah, I think those are the biggest takeaways I got from this format. What do you think, Alex? Sending it back to you. What about you?
I mean, I'm pretty much right there with you on the market thing. I didn't have much market practice before, and then this set pretty much, forced you to use the market. Well, not forced you, but it was there. It was accessible. So
Rewarding.
Let's learn how to do a market, and a successful market. Because a good market can really help you a lot. It also helped me hone my plunder or not skills, which I'm still not always great. I think I'm over my I have to do it every time thing. But yeah, those were 2 things that I think this set really helped me focus on.
John, what about you, buddy?
Yeah, I feel like I got a lot of practice at like playing aggro decks and building aggro decks. Like just having a focused, aggressive strategy is not something I've ever been very good at, I guess. And I don't know, I got a lot of practice this format. Like I mentioned, Basher is kind of a build around card for me. So I never really thought, like, I don't know, when I looked at that card at the beginning of the set, I didn't look at it like that. I was like, oh, this is a build around card. I was just like, that's a powerful card. Look at this thing. It's a big old chunker on 3. Like, it just looked like an aggressive card, but I kind of like learned how to make that really consistent. And so yeah, that's what I learned the most. Aggressive stuff.
Yeah, you definitely like the longer game decks, so I could see it being a definite big change for you. All right, and rounding off the last of our questions, favorite card in the format. Alex threw up Scrap Metal Fury, which I mean, here he's explained how he likes that card and why, and I gotta say I agree with him. Send the Market for me. I mean, I already mentioned Shoal Dredger earlier, and Send the Market. I always had a warm and fuzzy when I had one of those in my hand later in the game, when I was already either at parity or ahead. So that tip the hat to Send the Market. What about you, John?
Yeah, I think the favorite card for me would have been Okessa's Audience, right? Like it's just such a dorky card, but it probably made, I don't know, maybe every deck I feel like I always had at least one of those, maybe not, but like it was in most, if not all my decks, like multiple copies in some. It helped out early, get your draws smoothed out, hit your power. That 5/5 was always relevant. And then like, yeah, like in these later iterations when I could do more relic combo stuff with like consuming greeds and whatnot, like it went even higher in my mind. Like, so such a dorky card, colorless and all that, but I think that's got to be my favorite.
No, I think you're right. That's a very solid point. I was never upset to have one in my deck for sure. Last question is a wild card one. I gotta admit, I actually don't have an answer for this. For some reason, no voice lines come to me. So, what was the best voice line of the set, John?
Yeah, like I agree. Like none of them were that great. The one that comes to mind first is Promenade Patrol because it's so annoying. It's like keep those streets clean or something. Like it's like what? I don't know what you're doing. Like it like comes in and slaps your side street monitors down and then talks about keeping the streets clean. It's like, oh, you did not just do that.
Fair. All right, I like that. That was good. I like that, John.
Right.
Yeah, I saw the question. I was like, oh, sweet, yeah. And then I thought about it. I was like, man, none of them stand out to me. So no, I like that one. You're right. That's a good. I like that that analogy for or that play out for Promenade. That's solid.
It was literally talking smack about your side streets, right? And then like I liked it when I had a Decro in play, and he whenever he would say, "But how?" Like that meant he had already connected and just got regen, and you are winning that game. So that was a good listen,
nice.
right?
Now I gotta check it out then. Sweet.
Yeah, and then I mean, anytime I saw or played a Medibot station, I would Medibot. Like that's not in the game, but that's like a meme.
Fair.
It's some British show.
Yeah, I gotta go check and see what Metal Fang sounded like.
I can't remember what. I think that there is a voice line for Metal Fang. Maybe
there
not.
has to be.
I mean,
obviously it's not memorable.
I know they make sounds when they come in.
Yeah, the mechanical sounds or whatever. That's probably part of it. There were so many mandrakes. I guess the mandrakes just make like rambling.
Yeah, a lot of the
thrashing sounds or whatever.
Sound effects in this set. So that's correct.
Fair enough. But all right, that's it. That is the Sunset Show for Empire of Glass. Overall, a great set that we all enjoyed. And, it's time to close this chapter of the book, but it was definitely one we enjoyed reading. So thanks, Direwolf.
Yeah, great set. Looking forward to the next one.
Courtesy of team member Cal Shadowstep, we have an Eternal Revelations spoiler. John, are you ready to talk about this spoiler, buddy?
We got a spoiler. Heck yeah.
All right, let's do it. Without further ado, let's go ahead and just crack this one open. And this is Queen's Elite. So obviously the Queen of Glass has her crew. This is a 2/2 awakened at common for 3 Rakano. Queen's Elite reads, when you attack with exactly 2 units, no more, no less, the top unit or weapon of your deck gets +2/+2. So, 2 things to note. A, it says when you attack with exactly 2 units. It doesn't say anything about Queen's Elite having to be one of those units. And the other thing is the +2. We've seen this kind of effect before currently in Watchwing support. So it is a 2/2 for 3 though. What are your first impressions on this card, John?
Yeah, so obviously this is a theme that we've seen a ton of support for in the other spoilers, right? This attacking with exactly 2 units is definitely a thing. Like it's one of the mechanics for the set. Um, and then Awakened is a unit type they've had a ton of for the set. So yeah, this fits right in with what we've seen. As far as the power level of this, it's a common, right? So this is going to be a card we'll see in draft a lot. Um, I don't like it doesn't stand out to me as like being a particularly powerful card, and like the fact that it's a multicolored means I kind of like generally want a little more from my multicolored cards in draft, because they tend to be a little harder to play. So I don't know, like the fact that this is only the 2/2 stats really is a detractor for me. I've already gotten to do some play with cards like this in the preview week with the attacking with 2 units, and that's actually like that plays out pretty good, I think. So I think I don't want to just discount this completely, because especially like we mentioned about watching support, like that +2/+2 buff, that's a legit stat buff. But the fact that you can't control what it goes on, right, is the issue there. But sometimes that'll just you get one buff like that on some key flyer, and you're probably going to win that game. So I don't know. I'm definitely gonna try this out in draft. Looking forward to it, but I don't know. Like I don't think it's gonna be like an all-star draft card or anything. What's your first impression on it, Jedi?
Yeah, I don't think you want to play this on turn 3 because it doesn't really facilitate its ability on its own, right? It's not a, like you mentioned, it's not a decent enough body to jam in there, especially on turn 3 if you're on the draw, because now you're crashing this into their 4 drops. But I feel like if you draw this somewhere in the mid game where maybe you have 2 flyers or you can facilitate some kind of attack, maybe there's unblockable in this format or deadly or something like that. The fact, I think what really kind of sets it up a little bit to where it's a little on the more playable side for me is the fact that it doesn't have to be the one attacking, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that kind of helps it because it allows it if you're in a position where, let's say, for example, there's a Lord Steyre's Beckoning, right? Where you can get 2 evasive units off of 1 card. And then the following turn you play this in swing, you're kind of getting a 4/4 for 3, right? And that's reasonable. And if you happen to get another attack, then you're getting 6/6 worth of stats for 3. Granted, you don't know how they're getting divided, but and then maybe if it, the buff going on another unit makes it so that unit's able to attack.
Mm-hmm.
It's slow, it's a little clunky, but I think there's some application. It may be one of those cards that's just in specific scenarios it's going to pay off. But I'm with you. I don't think this is something you jam to every deck.
Yeah, just hearing you talk about it just made me think of it. Maybe I'm already a little like I think it might be a little better like when we actually play it. Like watching support did that +2/+2 buff, and it would like occasionally do another one or whatever, right? And sometimes it would all stack up onto 1 unit. I imagine this would play out kind of like it should play out pretty similarly in some games. So obviously sometimes
But
it's just not going to ever proc, right? Which is that fail case is definitely worse than watching support. But at least you get a body technically. So I don't know. Yeah, this one will be interesting to play with.
well, I mean, 2 things to add, both good and bad. One, it's Awakened, right? So that may be relevant in this format. It may not. We don't know yet. I don't think we've seen any cards that cares about Awakened, but it might. The other side to that, though, is the fact that one of the things that made Watchwing support so good is the fact that you were able to trigger it multiple times off of 1 card or in the same turn.
True.
Versus Quinn's Elite is absolutely impossible to. Well, not impossible, I guess, if you have 2 Berserk units that can't, that survive combat. But
yeah, that's true.
There is that ceiling on it, right? Where you're only going to get the +2/+2 per turn off of it. Minus that specific corner case I just mentioned, where you have 2 Berserk units.
So yeah, that's
because you can't even kill her with 2 units at the same time.
No.
So even though I believe the game counts that as an attack, it's not. You can't do it at the same time. So
yeah, that's a good point. So ultimately, probably slightly like worse than watching support as far as how it plays out on average. But
Mhm.
similar, yeah, this might be okay.
I mean, and then once again, the other flip side of that is Watchwing required attachments, which you may or may not want to put in your deck, versus this guy's just a unit that wants other units that you already want to do in your deck. So, like I said, once again, if there's anything that this current format has taught us, is that it is all format dependent. Because there were a handful of cards where we were like, nah, this card there's no way you're going to play this card. Oh, this card's amazing. And then we see the way the format actually plays out and we learn stuff. So I think this thing's enough on the scales, like kind of balanced one way or another on the scales, where we'll have to play the format to see if it plays out or not.
Cool. It's a nice surprise. Thank you so much, Cal Shadowstep, for providing this spoiler for us. Much appreciated.
Nice. Well said, John. All right, ladies and gents, that is going to do it for us. Really appreciate you guys tuning in. Join us next week where we have our common and uncommon set review. That's right. Those are the big flagships of this show, where we go down every card in the set and give you our best evaluations of it. Initial, and then, we'll follow it up with the first impressions to start to see how the format plays out and how we were right and wrong. But until then, as always, happy gaming.
Good night, everybody.